It was a long and contentious debate, and I want to thank the American people for keeping up the pressure on their elected officials to put politics aside and work together for the good of the country.
A done deal. The president signs into law a last-minute measure to raise the debt ceiling. Reaction from Washington and from Gainesville is tonight's big story. Hi, I'm Tambrey Laine. Thanks for choosing GTN News. Brian has the night off. While the new deal avoids a first-ever default on the government's financial obligations, it's only the first step in a continuing debate about Washington's wallet. Tara Mergener has the latest from our nation's capital.
He put the ink on the paper, but President Obama didn't thank or congratulate Congress as he typically does after major bills are passed.
It was a long and contentious debate.
Instead, he looked forward.
We've got to do everything in our power to grow this economy and put America back to work.
The ayes are 74 and the nays are 26.
Passed just hours before the deadline, the emergency bill increases the government's borrowing limit and makes $1 trillion in immediate spending cuts. A bipartisan super committee from both houses of Congress will determine another $1.5 trillion in savings. And the battle lines for that task are already being drawn. At issue whether tax revenue is in the mix.
Well, they're not going to be tax increases. That's one thing this committee will not even consider, and I don't think they should.
We've had too much talk the last few days of Republicans, as early as this morning, Republican leaders in the Senate saying there will be no revenue. That's not going to happen.
The president didn't let the point slide either.
Everyone's going to have to chip in. That's only fair.
There's also some question whether the committee can be effective at all.
I wouldn't focus a whole lot on what would happen if they didn't function, because I think they are.
If the committee fails, massive across-the-board cuts would be imposed automatically. But for now, after a long, bitter fight, Congress is on recess until next month. Tara Mergener for CBS News, Washington.
That new bipartisan super committee will be chosen over the next 2 weeks. They have until November 23rd to make their recommendations. So the worst case scenario of a national default appears to have been averted, but other consequences could be looming and they could impact you. News of a deal to raise the nation's debt ceiling was met with relief by everyone from senior citizens concerned about Social Security checks to students worried about interest rates on loans. But avoiding default might not be enough to avoid another D word you might have heard: downgrade. That's a dent in the U.S. credit rating, sort of like your credit score, determined by a handful of agencies looking at borrowing, spending, and paying the bills, and an indication of a worthy borrower. The U.S. has had a AAA, the highest level since anyone started keeping track. So how would a downgrade affect you? A lower credit rating would make it more expensive for the U.S. to borrow money, and rising interest rates could be passed along to you. It could also make other countries nervous about the U.S. economy, and if they lose faith in the U.S. dollar, the things people import will get more expensive, from the gas tank to the grocery store to the mall. It's also a good lesson for anyone managing credit in their own household, keeping bills on budget and under control to avoid penalties. Now, with all the debate on Capitol Hill, some people in Gainesville are sounding off about the government. GTN's George Solis has their story, including a message they want lawmakers to hear.
We're getting ready to have a civil war, not between rebels and Yankees, but between Americans and the government.
And Susan Wilkerson is not alone. Many Americans have reached a breaking point with all the bickering between party lines on the Hill. The views are less than optimistic for the nation's economy.
I think a recession isn't inevitable.
After months of negotiations between parties, the government has avoided what would have been the first ever default. The Senate passed the measure to raise the debt ceiling, and the president signed it into law almost immediately. The plan will cut government spending by approximately $2 trillion over 10 years. A measure some say is too little too late.
Nothing straight up. You know, we all have to balance our checkbooks every day, and Washington can't even balance theirs, you know, because we owe so many people.
Others are just frustrated keeping up with all the changes leading up to the final vote.
It's really hard to decipher exactly what they're saying.
Economic experts say part of that confusion comes from a political monkey wrench that's been thrown into the mix.
Well, I think that clearly the new player on the field is the Tea Party. And so you had a lot of people who had been elected to the Congress who had taken a pledge that there was no way in which they were going to vote for any tax increase.
And while the government has avoided defaulting, experts say until they tighten the belts, the debt crisis will always loom. George Solis, GTN News.
Stop spending. Just plain out stop spending.
Working for you.
It's National Night Out. Community members and law enforcement are mingling in neighborhoods to fight crime in a unique way. GTN photojournalist Patrick Fleming takes us to one local event.
The Gainesville Police Department and the community come together and stand out against crime. It is one of the things that we do to exemplify the partnership that we try to work with throughout the year to reduce crime in the city of Gainesville.
This is where citizens go out and sort of reclaim their neighborhoods. We have lots of kids here tonight, which you probably see, and for kids and also just ordinary people to see that the police are individuals, just to make it more like, oh, these are people that we can ask for help if we need it. The police come and they bring either the Segway, I think tonight we have the K9 unit.
We got individuals from all ages and ethnicities that are represented here, and it's all designed to reduce crime.
GTN's Venice Toussaint talked to one community activist who helped launch the first Night Out event in Alachua County over a decade ago. She shows us how one neighborhood has turned around for the better.
It's no nonsense. Zero drug tolerance. That's our motto.
People in the Lincoln Estates neighborhood are serious about keeping crime off of their streets.
We can't just sit here and expect for things to happen, but the way to get them to happen is to actually become involved. And so that's what we've done, and it really does work, and it has brought us some really great results.
They're proactive, forming a neighborhood watch group with 16 block captains who chaperone kids walking home from school, stop fights, and host community meetings. Lincoln Estates was also the first neighborhood to take part in the Night Out Against Crime with GPD 14 years ago.
We're proud to have this title. We were the first in Alachua County to start National Night Out.
And she's collected thousands of pictures of the popular fish fry and fellowship.
This is one of my favorite pictures right here, where two ladies that hadn't seen each other for a while just come together in love and just having a good time.
Though the event has brought out hundreds of people each year, she says there's a lot more to crime prevention than that.
National Night Out does not have a direct correlation with the decrease of crime. That direct correlation comes from being proactive.
The nosy neighbor concept is what she calls it, where everyone watches each other's backs. That's what she says helped turn her neighborhood around.
Crime is down by 25%. Drugs are down. We're not saying that everything is peachy creamy. It is not, but it's tolerable and will continue to work.
People in this tight-knit community say they'll keep working together, bringing positive change to their neighborhood. Venice Toussaint, GTN News, working for you.
So how can you prevent violence in your neighborhood, home, and schools? Find out at the Stop the Violence Back to School rally. This year's focus is on stopping gangs and gang-related violence. The rally is August 13th from 10 to noon at the Santa Fe College Gymnasium. Well, a stormy evening in parts of our viewing area tonight. Meteorologist Ed Russo's in for Kyle. He joins us live from the Weather Center. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Tambrey. Yeah, we've seen almost 2 inches of rain across the Gainesville area since 9 o'clock tonight. You can see this thunderstorm just exploded during the evening hours, and you can see all the dark maroons, reds, extremely very, very heavy rain, but pretty much it's all fizzled out now, not just seeing only showers, but practically partly cloudy skies. At least that's what's left over from that storm. Still a couple storms across southern Marion County, but rest of the state looking pretty good tonight, and I think overnight we are going to be dry and basically end all chances for rain. Tomorrow, a mostly dry day, but there will be 1 or 2 areas that I think that could get a shower or storm, and we'll need it because we'll be hot once again in the middle to upper 90s. Tambrey?
Thanks. The High Springs Fire Department is mourning the loss of one of their own. 35-year-old Chad Hood had been with the department since 2007. You can see him here wearing pink in support of breast cancer awareness. Hood died this morning on his way to work when a van crashed into his motorcycle. The accident happened on Highway 441 in Alachua. Hood is the second local firefighter in less than a year to die in a crash. Gainesville firefighter Robert Gachet was killed in November. He was coming home from a hunting trip in Georgia when he crashed in Baker County. Firefighters say they all have an especially close bond, and dealing with that tragedy can be tough.
Anytime you have a tragic loss, whether it's a friend or a family member or any coworker that you have, especially with the vehicle accident, with the suddenness of it. There's a shock initially, and then, of course, the sadness that goes along with any type of tragedy like that.
And funeral arrangements for Chad Hood have not been announced yet. 2 women were killed when an SUV plowed into a Florida store today. Miami-Dade police say the driver lost control when he accidentally hit the gas pedal. The crash instantly killed a pregnant employee and a female customer. The woman's unborn baby also died despite efforts to save it. The driver suffered minor injuries. A Florida teenager loses his leg in a jet ski accident. 14-year-old John Dahl was riding a Sea-Doo yesterday while another friend was driving. A third teen was being pulled on a knee board. Witnesses say at one point Dahl jumped off the jet ski and his leg got caught in the tow line. He was taken to the hospital. The doctors could not save his leg. If you have any professional clothing you don't need that's still in good shape, you might want to consider donating it to help someone get a job. Men's Warehouse clothing stores are holding a national suit drive collecting men's and women's suits, shirts, jackets, ties, belts, and shoes. The company is giving everything that comes in to local charities. In Gainesville, your donations will help people who are job hunting.
It's going to help young men get ready for the work field or pursue college, because we know you can only make a first impression once, and it's got to be a good one.
Men's Warehouse will give you a tax receipt and a 50% off coupon to use in the store. The drive continues through the end of this month. Still ahead on GTN News, a deadly salmonella outbreak spreading fear across the country. What and who is affected?